Sinai is a harsh desert of precipitous granite mountains and narrow, rock-strewn valleys. In the scriptures, it is called the waste, howling wilderness. Water is scarce, and few plants manage to survive. In this severe and barren land, it becomes difficult to sustain life. And yet, it was here that hermits and anchorites came in the latter 3rd and early 4th centuries, searching for places of solitude where they might pass their lives in prayer and fasting. But Sinai is more than a harsh desert, for it was here that God revealed himself in a special way to the prophet Moses, first at the bush that burned with fire without being consumed, and then at the peak of Sinai, where he received the tablets of the law. Here he beheld the tabernacle in divine vision, and was commanded to create its counterpart on earth, that the worship offered here below should be unto the example and shadow of heavenly things. Here also God revealed himself to the prophet Elias, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a still small voice, or as it says in the Greek of the Septuagint, phoni avras leptis, the voice of a gentle breeze. One of the oldest surviving Christian pilgrim accounts is that of Egeria, who visited Jerusalem in the year 383. She worshipped at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which had been built only some 50 years before by the Emperor Constantine. From there, she continued on to Sinai, a distance of 22 staging posts. She climbed to the peak of Sinai, where a venerable hieromonk celebrated the liturgy for the assembled monks and pilgrims. She writes, "A hale old man, a monk from early life, an ascetes, as they say here. After the liturgy, the monks brought fruits from their gardens for the benefit of the pilgrims." And she writes, "The priests of that place gave us evlogias, that is, of fruits which grow on the mountain." She then venerated the cave of the prophet Elias a short distance below the summit, and was diligent to read the appropriate scriptures from the books of the kings. Only then did she descend to the opposite valley, and she writes, "There are a great number of monastic cells of holy men there, and a church in the place where the bush stands. The bush is alive to this day and sends out green shoots." In the latter 4th century, she witnessed what was already a flourishing monastic presence, and was herself even then following an established pilgrim route. Incorporating Greek words into her account, ascetes, evlogias, she shows us what we should have known even without such quotations. From the 4th century, Sinai was an extension of the Holy Land, the far reaches of the Holy Land. As such, it was also a part of the Greek-speaking world. And yet, if Greek was the language of the Sinai monks at that time, it was not exclusively so, for Sinai was the destination of monks and pilgrims from the whole of Christendom. An anonymous pilgrim from Piacenza, Italy, visited Sinai in the middle of the 6th century, when the fortress walls of the monastery would only recently have been completed. He writes, "They led us into the valley between Horeb and Sinai. At the foot of the mountain is that spring where Moses saw the sign of the burning bush, and at which he gave water to his sheep. The spring is enclosed within a monastery, and the monastery is surrounded by fortified walls. In it are 3 elders who are learned in several languages, Latin and Greek, Syriac, Egyptian, and Besson, as well as many translators of individual languages." The climate at Sinai is very dry and stable. The monastery has never been destroyed and never abandoned in all its history. Over the centuries, a remarkable library was formed. The wide range of texts in many different languages in today's library reflect the long and complex history of the monastery. The greatest number are in Greek. They consist of manuscripts of the scriptures, the services, writings of the Church Fathers, and books of spiritual wisdom to guide and sustain the monks in their dedication. But the volumes also include texts in classical Greek, which remains the pinnacle of the Greek language. They also contain medical texts, historical accounts, and travel accounts. Here are a few examples. Greek, too, is a 10th century copy of Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus. The text of the scriptures is written in large characters, leaving generous margins. These are filled with commentary drawn from 24 different authors, beginning with Josephus and Philo. The marginal notes are invaluable for the insights they provide into the meaning of the scriptures. They show the correlation that exists between Old Testament and New. This is the key to understanding the imagery of many Orthodox hymns and icons. Greek 401 is a manuscript of the spiritual homilies of St. Theodore the Studite, who lived from 759 to 826. Under his wise direction, the Studite monastery in Constantinople became the model of piety and devotion. The colophon on 205 verso reads, "Christ, grant me grace for the sake of my labors, by delivering me from my many offenses. Peter, who wrote this divine book of the Studite, our father among the saints, on the commission of Abba and Presbyter Leontius, who procured it by his longing for the kingdom of heaven. This book was written in the month of August, the 18th, Wednesday, the 9th hour, the 14th cycle of the sun, the first of the moon, the year 6594, the 9th indiction. The end. Glory be to thee." Someone has done the math and added in pencil that the date corresponds to AD 1086. Greek 418 is an illuminated manuscript of the Ladder of Divine Ascent dating from the 12th century. St. John compares the spiritual life to the ladder that Jacob saw extending from earth to heaven. As we make our ascent, sorrow gives birth to joy, and fear is replaced by love. St. John writes, "There is actually no limit to love. We shall never cease to advance in it, either in the present or in the future life, continually adding light to light." This manuscript has 43 miniatures. The drawing is delicate and the figures are elegant. The color is subtle and the use of gold abundant. The faces are expressive and individualized. Their modeling indicates an artist trained or familiar with Constantinopolitan workshops, though we cannot rule out Sinai as the place of production. Greek 3 is a manuscript of the Book of Job with scholia and protheoria by Olympiodorus. It dates from the 11th century and is thought to have been produced in the Studite monastery in Constantinople. It has 27 miniatures. In all, the figures are elegant and slender, with widespread use of gold hatching. Folio 7 recto has an illumination depicting Job and his wife. They are seated on backless thrones, their feet resting on jeweled and pearl footstools, and they converse with each other. As we know, Job lost all of his wealth, but because his faith in God remained unshaken, God gave him twice as many possessions as he had had before. Cosmas Indicoplastes was a Greek merchant who made several trips to India and Ceylon in the 6th century. He later became a monk in East Syria. He wrote his book on topography between 547 and 549 to give details about the countries he had visited and to explain the history and operation of the cosmos. He mentions the Christians of India who live in the area where pepper grows. There are 3 illuminated manuscripts of the Christian topography at Florence, Rome, and Sinai. The illustrations are similar in all 3 and are thought to derive from drawings in the original manuscript. The Sinai manuscript dates from the early 11th century. Folio 202 verso shows a seal, a dolphin, and a turtle. To the left, a man harvest peppers, an important export from India even in the 6th century. Greek 339 is a manuscript of the Homilies of St. Gregory the Theologian, 4th century bishop of Constantinople. It was written between 1136 and 1155. Folio 91 recto has a headpiece portraying the Nativity of Christ. A band-like altar frame defined by filigree fillets is decorated with delicate petal flowers in a chevron-like pattern. Another frame enclosing the four-lobed panel inset with the scene, the latter bordered by a sima, is filled with flower petal ornament. A rinso running from lower center to upper center develops into 4 large corner roundels with smaller scrolls between, all symmetrically arranged. Each of the corner roundels, their borders carpeted with open flowers and tile-like patterns, encloses one extremely rich whirling palmette. The Nativity is represented as a liturgical feast with traditional iconography. The headpiece is very striking with its rich and infinitely varied ornament. Greek 165 is a small manuscript of the 4 Gospels written on parchment in the 15th century. The scribe was John Rossos, a native of Crete, who created this manuscript for the Sinai Monastery on Crete. In 1450, he emigrated to Italy, where he worked in Venice, Florence, Rome, and other cities, copying and translating works of Greek classical literature. He created manuscripts for Cardinal Bessarion and is considered by some to be one of the most important Greek copyists of the Renaissance. Folio 20 verso of this manuscript has an illumination of the evangelist Matthew. He sharpens his quill with a penknife, the ink pot open before him, ready to begin writing his gospel. The illumination is subtle and refined. Sinai has a number of manuscripts written in Christian Palestinian Aramaic. This is a type of Western Aramaic and thus is close to the dialect that would have been spoken by Jesus and his disciples and the first Aramaic-speaking Christians. A Sinai manuscript written in Christian Palestinian Aramaic that dates from the 7th or 8th century contains the sayings of the Desert Fathers, number 59 in the collection. Classical Syriac was a language spoken in Upper Mesopotamia. In the late antique world, Syriac-speaking villages stretched from the Mediterranean to the foothills of the Zagros and from Antioch to Ctesiphon, the Persian capital. Many important works of Greek philosophy, literature, and medicine were translated into Syriac. In addition, many works of Christian poetry and exegesis were composed in Syriac. The oldest surviving manuscript in the world of the works of Dionysius the Areopagite is Sinai Syriac 52, a manuscript of the 6th century, the very century in which these works were first translated from Greek into Syriac. Syria, Palestine, and Egypt came under Arab rule in the early 7th century. By the 8th century, Christians were expressing themselves in Arabic and finding their place in Arabic culture. It was then that many works were translated from Syriac into Arabic, or more rarely, directly from the Greek. In this way, the torch of learning was passed from the world of classical antiquity to the emerging Arabic-speaking world. Greek 36 is a bilingual psalter written in Majuscule Greek and Kufic Arabic, the earliest Arabic script. It dates from the 8th or 9th century. This is an early example of the translation of the scriptures into Arabic. Arabic 151 is a manuscript of the epistles and Acts. It has the following colophon at the end of the epistles. The weakling, the poor sinner, Bishr ibn Asiri, translated these 14 epistles from Syriac into Arabic, and as best he could set forth their interpretation for his spiritual brother Suleiman. He finished the work in the month of Ramadan in the year of the Hijra 253, in the city of Damascus. The year of the Hijra 253 corresponds to AD 867. There is evidence for Georgian monks at Sinai as early as the 6th century, but this reached a zenith in the 9th and 10th centuries. Georgian scribes copied out manuscripts of the scriptures, lectionaries, and other liturgical books, as well as lives of the saints, homilies, and ascetical writings. Some of these were important translations made at Sinai. Georgian 97 contains selections from the works of Saint Ephrem. Monks from Georgia made the translation, copied out the text on parchment, and bound the manuscript. The Glagolitic script was devised by St. Cyril and Methodius, brothers from Thessalonica, who were sent by the Byzantine Emperor Michael III in 863 to Great Moravia to bring Christianity to the West Slavs of the area. Sinai Slavonic 37, known as the Evchologium Sinaiticum, is a collection of diverse prayers and dates from the 11th century. It includes parts of the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. 3 folios of this manuscript were taken by Archimandrite Porphyrio Spinsky and are today preserved in St. Petersburg. The Glagolitic manuscripts of Sinai, at least 5 in number, plus 2 palimpsest fragments, represent a good half of all the material that has survived from the period before the 13th century. Slavonic 7 is a psalter written on parchment in the 13th century. From certain characteristics of the script, we know that it is a Serbian Church Slavonic manuscript. St. Sava of Serbia visited Jerusalem and Sinai. While he was at Sinai, he celebrated the Divine Liturgy in the Chapel of the Burning Bush. Various Serbian rulers gave donations to the monastery, and manuscripts were commissioned for use there. In the late 14th century, there was even a small Serbian scriptorium at Sinai. This manuscript is one of the earliest Serbian Church Slavonic psalters extant. It is an important witness to Serbian patronage and pilgrimage to St. Catherine's Monastery. The monastery has manuscripts that are great works of art. Greek 204 is a lectionary containing the gospel readings for 71 feast days. It dates from the 10th century and was created in the Imperial Scriptoria of Constantinople. There are 7 illuminations at the beginning of the manuscript. Following the illuminations, every letter on every page is executed in gold leaf. The letters flash and gleam as the pages are turned. But the library also contains many humble manuscripts that were used daily in the services and in private prayers. These are worn, and some of them have been repaired with whatever materials were at hand. Sinai Greek 898 is an orologion written in the year 1335. From the prayers of the 6th hour, let thy tender mercies, O Lord, speedily go before us, for we are become exceeding poor. Help us, O God of our salvation, for the glory of thy name. These manuscripts seem no less important, witnesses to the devotion of the monks and to the isolation and austerity of the monastery centuries ago. The present library building dates from 1951. It was a great improvement over the numerous small rooms in the oldest part of the monastery that had been used up to that time for the storage of manuscripts. But it was constructed when there was no electricity at the monastery, when building materials could only be brought through the desert with great difficulty. We have known for some time that today we can do better. The St. Catherine Foundation is registered charity established in the United Kingdom in 1996 under the patronage of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. The foundation and its affiliated foundations in New York and Geneva support conservation work at St. Catherine's Monastery, and the monastery's library is the present focus of conservation activities. In March of 1998, Nicholas Pickwood was asked by the St. Catherine Foundation to direct these conservation activities. He felt that the first task should be the assessment of the entire manuscript collection, which would record the present state of each manuscript. This information could then be used to plan and coordinate further programs. Teams of 6 or 8 conservators spent 4-week sessions at the monastery filling out complex forms recording the state of each manuscript. They also made drawings and took photographs of each binding. In all, 35 conservators from 9 different countries came to Sinai in the course of 15 sessions, beginning in November 2001 and completing their work in February 2006. This information proved to be essential in planning the new library. In 2005, Dimitri Porphyrios, principal of Porphyrios Associates, was commissioned to draw up a concept design for the renovation of the Sinai Library. Ambitious conceptual designs were received for the renovation of the library itself and for the construction of conservation workshops and rooms for the digital photography of manuscripts on the west wing of the building opposite the library. Engineers took these conceptual designs and worked out the construction details to provide the architectural drawings that guided the renovation. Members of the community and local workers carried out all the basic tasks, removing plaster from walls and repointing the stones. The building was stripped back to its concrete core and then reinforced. We found that the 1951 concrete roof slab needed to be bolted together in places with steel plates. By contrast, the 6th century fortress wall with its ashlars of hewn granite is still in an excellent state of preservation. After this, we were able to make the modifications called for in the architectural plans. Skilled craftsmen were brought in to install the limestone floor. Moldings were added to the existing concrete beams, and these were replastered to create smooth surfaces. An intricate coffered ceiling was installed from moldings made on site and plasterboard. This creates beautiful patterns of light and shadow on the ceilings. Behind the ceiling are thick layers of insulation to prevent radiant heat from penetrating the building in the summer. When this was ready, the stainless steel balcony that completely encircles the room could be installed. There are stairways for access at opposite corners of the room. The balcony was made in Thessalonica, and all parts were welded into place. The work was finally completed in 2017. Today there is a very stately entrance to the library. At the end of the balcony, high-security steel doors are surmounted by a mosaic with the logo of the monastery set into a limestone frame. Passing through the narthex, we come to the reading room for visiting scholars. Tables and chairs have been carved with the same logo of the monastery. Bookshelves hold reference books. All of these were custom-made and imported from Greece. The room can be air-conditioned in the summer, and there is underfloor heating for the winter. The entire room creates an inviting space for the study of the Sinai manuscripts. A passageway lined with further bookshelves leads to the large hall that serves as the principal depository for the manuscripts and early printed books. The room is beautiful, but more importantly, the volumes are now in a more stable environment to ensure their long-term preservation. We are grateful to the directors of the St. Catherine Foundation, with its 3 affiliated branches in London, New York, and Geneva, and to the many generous donors who made this renovation possible. The difficulties that we encountered in carrying out this renovation were numerous. Each one was resolved because of the many talented people involved in the renovation who worked tirelessly and selflessly to ensure the completion of this important project. We are grateful above all to Mr. Dimitri Dondas, head of the St. Catherine Foundation in London, who kept his hand firmly on the rudder and brought the renovation to its successful completion. The present library is a tribute to the labors and the devotion of all those who had a part. In making plans for the renovation of the library, two decisions were made that had far-reaching effects. The old library had the manuscripts at balcony level, with a collection of early printed books below. But most scholars visit Sinai to study the manuscripts. It was decided to reverse this arrangement to make the manuscripts more accessible to the librarian. Today, the shelves at balcony level hold the collection of early Greek printed books, some 8,000 volumes in number. The manuscripts are now at the lower level. Many of the Sinai manuscripts are very fragile. Sinai Greek 210 is a lectionary containing the text of the Gospels divided up for reading in the services. It is a large and imposing volume written in magisterial Greek on parchment. It dates from the 8th century. Should such manuscripts be rebound? That is always a difficult question. In the past, especially in European libraries, it was customary to rebind such manuscripts. This rarely happened at Sinai. As a result, Sinai is one of the most important libraries in the world for intact early bindings. Today, conservators feel that if a manuscript is stable, preserving its historical integrity should be paramount. When a manuscript is rebound, a part of its history is lost, but such volumes do need protection. It is customary for manuscript libraries to have the more important volumes in protective boxes, and a decision was made to do the same at Sinai. Categories were created for those manuscripts that deserve to be enclosed in protective boxes: manuscripts with illuminations, manuscripts above a certain age, manuscripts in Byzantine-style bindings. By the time all these categories were applied, it became evident that the entire lower area of this room should be given over for the storage of manuscripts in boxes. This was approved by the St. Catherine Foundation. Thanasis Velios, a computer programmer working for the foundation in the UK, wrote a program that would take the dimensions of the manuscripts from the manuscript survey and create a layout to make the most efficient use of the available space. This was used to create the designs for the racks that hold the individual shelves. Each manuscript has now been put in place on its designated shelf. It was a relief when I placed the last manuscript in place and checked again to verify that all were accounted for and each in its proper place. A number of printed books of exceptional importance will also be stored in cases. Manuscripts that are more recent, that do not need protective cases, have been stored on rolling stacks in the archive, which is in an adjoining room at balcony level. Sample boxes were made of archival board covered with library cloth, but in the dry air of Sinai they distorted and did not hold up. Wooden boxes were also sent here, but they also cracked in the low humidity. It was decided to make the boxes of stainless steel. Though the cost would be high, these are certainly long-term solutions. Each box is custom-made to fit a unique manuscript. The stainless steel has been smoothed on all edges and polished to a mirror finish. A plate on the front of brushed stainless steel has laser-cut letters giving the language and number of the manuscript with the logo of the monastery below. The box opens flat. It is lined with plastizote, an inert foam material widely used by conservators in the UK. Silicon gaskets slow changes in temperature and humidity, but allow the contents to adjust to ambient conditions. The manuscript itself is in a fold-up box of archival board called a wrapper. This opens to reveal the manuscript within. It is an easy process to retrieve a manuscript for a scholar and return it to its place. Sinai Greek 901 is an orologion written in the 16th century. It is in a Byzantine-style binding. In time, as funds allow, all of the manuscripts in this room will be enclosed in archival cases. These will give the manuscripts the protection they need. There are plans to create a conservation workshop at the west end of the same building. Then, trusted conservators with years of experience in such matters can turn their attention to those volumes that do need intervention to ensure their long-term preservation. Each of these archival cases costs $1,000. They are made at a state-of-the-art workshop in Athens. This price includes the cost of shipping them to Egypt together with import duties. Already, almost half of the boxes have been subscribed. Those who donate the entire cost of a box can submit a name that the box is in honor of someone or in memory of someone, and these names will be displayed in the library at the completion of the project. But donations of any amount are welcomed. Donations can be made at the website stcatherinefoundation.org. By making a donation to the St. Catherine Foundation, you support their work as they seek to support the Sinai Library. The Sinai Library continues to be of the greatest importance for the study of the Scriptures, the writings of the Church Fathers, the services, and the spiritual heritage of Sinai. In some ways, it is the collective memory of the monastery, a witness to its long and multifaceted history, and to the devotion of the monks who have lived here for so many centuries. We are grateful to the St. Catherine Foundation for their dedication to the conservation of the Sinai Library. It is a great treasure, but a treasure that we hold in trust for the whole world.